Welcome back to part 2 of our 2-part episode on detoxification with Dr. Andy Wong. If you haven't had a chance to listen to part 1 yet, make sure to tune into that one so you don't miss any of this invaluable information on how to best detoxify your body. Let's jump in.
We talk about air pollution. Yes, there's air pollution, but there's also indoor pollution. And especially if someone has carpeting and formaldehyde from the furniture and the flame retardants, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are just things that are in the indoor environment that are circulating there. And then, even if you get windows that, now all the windows are coming out that are like really 100% sealed, which is good for the energy bill, but also it can trap some of those chemicals in. So actually what you want to do if you live in a house or whatever, apartment or whatever, is you want to open those windows. And also you want to get outside.
So there's many sources. There's air pollution, there's chemicals in food, there's household products, there's heavy metals, bisphenol A. I'm just going to name some of these because I want people to understand that, these are out there. There's PFAS, there's radon, dioxins, formaldehyde, volatile organic compounds. There's so many things out there. Now you could go nuts and think about all this on a consistent basis and hole yourself up, in a sterile room and think you're saving yourself, but that's not the truth. The truth is your body has ways to deal with these things. That's the beauty of it. You really don't want to expose yourself, but you can't be perfect. And as you mentioned, Andy, you don't want perfection to be the enemy of good, right?
There's no sterile room. That's a myth. Even Bubble Boy probably had a bunch of toxins in there. So let's just.
It was a plastic bubble. I mean, it was a plastic.
You know what? He was breathing in more because the thing is, indoor air is 4 times as polluted as outdoor air, even with all the exhaust from the cars and stuff. So another big, real practical point for your listeners, Ravi, and for us is that we need to get outside more. We talk about air pollution. Yes, there's air pollution, but there's also indoor pollution. And especially if someone has carpeting and formaldehyde from the furniture and what is it from the bedding, that is another thing, the flame retardants, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are just things that are in the indoor environment that are circulating there. And then, even if you get windows that, now all the windows are coming out that are like really 100% sealed, which is good for the energy bill, but also it can trap some of those chemicals in. So actually what you want to do if you live in a house or whatever, apartment or whatever, is you want to open those windows and also you want to get outside. Another fact that I think people, probably understand at an intuitive level, but just the data kind of brings that home, is that we spend over 93% of the time, this was pre-pandemic, we spend 93% of our time indoors per the EPA. And I think, now we see a lot of people kind of shut in during the pandemic, which is now almost over. But the idea is getting outside actually helps to recirculate some of those toxins and, or get them out of your system through getting the fresh air in.
Absolutely. I mean, so important for so many reasons. So awesome point, Andy. So just basically to summarize, we know we have a detoxification system in place. It's a natural system. We know it's supported by certain nutrients and vitamins and other plant derivatives. We know that we're exposed to a lot of toxins, and this detoxification system is helping us to process all this out of our body. So the question is what can we do to support this system? What are some actions we can take?
So I'm gonna also use my dad's favorite method for this. I think use this when he was trying to perfect his golf swing, but it's the KISS method, right? The keep it simple method.
Right.
I think what I want to talk about first before we get into that, Ravi, is that besides phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox, there's actually a more important phase, which is phase 3, which is elimination.
Okay.
So the point of that is that if we are doing various things for cytochrome P450, oxidation reduction and then conjugation and all that, liver is working, but we don't have we're not urinating, and especially we're not having bowel movements regularly, then phase 1 and phase 2 kind of are all for naught. So think about a roto-rooter pipe, and you're detoxing that sewage in there, and everything's kind of flowing and kind of going through the way it should. But then at the end of that pipe, there's no hole, there's no exit point, right? Then all that work that your liver did was for nothing at that point. So what happens in the colon is that there's actually an enzyme that is kind of a sneaky enzyme called beta glucuronidase. Well, that enzyme will kind of what we call the detoxification enzyme as an example. That's one example is that what happens is in that situation when even like hormones are trying to get detoxified by the body and estrogen is a hormone that gets detoxified by the liver. This is one example is what happens is that estrogen metabolite goes down to the colon. In the case of gut microbial imbalance, there is usually an elevation of an enzyme called beta glucuronidase. That glucuronidase, I should say it's the long word, will then retoxify, meaning it will make that estrogen get reabsorbed back to the bloodstream and then goes back to the liver where it has to be detoxified again. So it's kind of like this Greek mythology of having Sisyphus, climb up a hill with a boulder and then all of a sudden, and you're doing all this work to try to detoxify, but then all of a sudden, something happens and he slips or something, the boulder falls back down. That person has to detoxify that estrogen all over again. And so the reason I'm saying that about beta glucuronidase is that it's the same situation that happens if someone has constipation, if someone's not having regular bowel movements. What's happening is those toxins aren't just sitting there in the colon waiting to be dumped out. Some of those toxins actually get reabsorbed by the system, and then you have to detoxify them again.
Okay. So facilitating good bowel movements, super important. I imagine this by the same mechanism, making sure you're well hydrated and you're flushing your system.
Yeah, hydrated, magnesium, triphala, psyllium seed, prunes, fiber in general, all those type of things. There's a lot of other things, but those are kind of the main things. And then you could go back to, once you're having healthy bowel movements and you're saying, well, how can I optimize my liver? Then we're getting into the phase 1 and phase 2 supports. So I would say, the key nutrients would be things that would help with oxidation reduction. So things like B vitamins, glutathione, phospholipids, especially phosphatidylcholine is important. And then in phase 2, it's usually things like amino acids like cysteine. You mentioned N-acetylcysteine, which is the rate limiting amino acid for glutathione. You can also use glutathione itself. Sometimes we'll use NAC and glutathione together because often if a patient is functionally protein deficient, they'll break down the glutathione back into NAC.
Okay.
So sometimes we'll use both. Glycine is important, glutamine is important, and then taurine is also important. Okay. The other thing that's important is something called methionine, which is found in protein a lot. So I think besides supplementation, I think a bigger point is eat protein. So you need the protein to break down to amino acids to help phase 2 liver detox. So one of the big things that we know is if you're trying to detoxify well, you need to have adequate amounts of protein to fuel the detox system. So your liver needs the protein for fuel to detoxify effectively. It's kind of like if you don't have the protein, your car is running on empty, without a gas tank and, without a gas station nearby.
Right. So the ways we can support ourselves, we spoke about this when we're talking about food, but the number 1, 2, and 3 is decrease exposure, right? Like you want to make sure you're not exposed to these things as best as possible.
Absolutely.
Eat wholesome foods, unprocessed, low sugar, low artificial ingredients, low glyphosate, or, choose organic sources. Also get outside, avoid pollution and all the, all the various things that we mentioned. Filter your water. Reverse osmosis is the best way to do it. Facilitate good bowel movements. You mentioned sweating earlier as one of the only ways to remove plastics. Can you talk about sweating and how that's beneficial in detoxification?
Yes. Well, when the sweat glands open up and, sweat comes out, part of what's coming out besides, some, water, etc., sometimes electrolytes may come out. But I think the big thing that comes out from a perspective of benefit is toxins. So toxins would be things like heavy metals, plastics. I think the thing that I know is that definitely there are certain plastics that definitely need to be sweat out and they can't be detoxified any other way. Now, you wonder why the liver, I guess why the colon and the kidney and everything, why that didn't evolve to, detoxify plastics. Well, plastics were not around millions of years ago, right? So this is just one of these things that's newer. And so what we like to do, I'm a big fan of sauna. And so I think there's different ways to sweat. You can sweat by exercising, obviously. You can sweat by, going to the gym and using a sauna or having a sauna at home. But there is some evidence that shows that being in a calm state when you're sweating is more beneficial than the sort of exercise-induced sweating. So with exercise-induced sweating, you're having your heart rate go up, your blood pressure go up, the sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight is going up. So you are sweating out some toxins in that situation, but you're probably sweating out more toxins if you are in a calm meditative mode, like if you're in a sauna and you're kind of relaxing and you're just kind of sweating out more. The other thing that has been shown is that you need about 10 minutes of sweating at least to start to activate that detox system in the skin. So if someone is a slow sweater, there's some people that just genetically have slow sweating, or they might even have things like mold exposure that make them sweat less efficiently. You're going to have to be in that sauna or in that sweating situation for long, or rather in that heated situation for longer to start sweating. So I usually advise people to count the time that you start sweating and then make sure that's about 10 minutes if they can tolerate it. So let's pretend, Ravi, it took you 20 minutes, to start sweating. You would add about 10 to that to make sure you're in that sauna for about 30 minutes.
Okay, I see. And there's good data that demonstrates that. Actually, there's one study that I was recently looking at, 2015. They followed 2,300 men for an average of 20 years and found that sauna 4 to 7 times a week had a 50% lower risk of sudden cardiac death, 63% lower risk of fatal coronary artery disease, 40% lower risk of all-cause mortality. So, pretty significant endpoints. And, study was done in Finland. So, the critique of this is that it may not be applicable to everyone. And a lot of the Finnish people use sauna, but you can extrapolate that in some ways in demonstrating a benefit. So absolutely. So sauna is super important, but let me ask you about plastics. If you don't sweat, say, some people just don't exercise. They don't do much. Are you saying that plastic bioaccumulates?
It does. There are ways to try to get that out. There are certain binders that can be used. And sometimes we've seen that this could be helpful to some degree. Clay, charcoal, humic acid, fulvic acid. There are certain things that can bind some of these toxins and kind of bring them out. We use urine, environmental chemical and mycotoxin and heavy metal testing to assess, the success of that protocol. So we kind of do a pre-post treatment urine testing. But I think that, yes, the other problem with plastics is that a lot of them are visible. Like, we know that we shouldn't drink from plastic water bottles because you're basically drinking water plus plastic when you do that. And also, I remember, we used to go to Costco, when I was little, and we'd buy these like huge, they still have them, right? These 24 packs of, plastic water bottles. But I always remember kind of thinking, well, why does that water taste plasticky? Well, is it my imagination? And then I realized later on, it's like, no, I'm actually just drinking plastic, and that's why it tastes like that. Versus if you drink from like a natural spring water or something, you drink from a glass bottle or something, right? You feel that too, right? The taste is different.
I do, yeah. I've noticed that. A lot of people actually, people that aren't really thinking about these things either, they tell me that they don't like drinking out of plastic bottles. There's just for the taste purposes alone. They really focus on.
Yeah, and the body's not fooling us. The taste is just telling us that we're actually drinking plastic,
Yeah.
But the other issue is that there's actually nanoplastics now. There's a lot of plastics from industrial pollution, and there's plastics that are kind of invisible in the environment. So there's a big push on research now in terms of we're actually breathing plastic in the air, with especially in industrial places. There's plastic in the water, obviously, so there's a bunch of things that are happening. Even if you avoid plastic, you can't really avoid it completely.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're saying the best way to get rid of these plastics is to sweat. How many times a week would you?
So I know the Finnish study said, 5 to 6 or more times a week for cardiovascular benefit. I think even mortality benefit. I think, in our situation in the US, I wouldn't say, and, we're not in a Nordic climate necessarily, unless we're in Maine or something. Maybe that's a little bit cold. But, we're really looking at about 3 times a week as a target here. That's what we're usually looking at. Yeah.
Okay, great. So you also mentioned some supplements. You kind of went through them. Can people take these supplements along with all the other recommendations that we just spoke of? Should they see a functional medicine provider before they take any supplements? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's not always necessary to see a functional medicine provider before, some of these basic supplements. I mean, a lot of these are very safe and they're very effective, and probably a lot of people do need support because, like I said, the world is very toxic now. And just if you think about, if someone's under stress, if someone has more chronic inflammation, they're going to need more detox support. So it might not be that they are on them for a long period of time. I would say I would advise if someone's on a lot of supplements, for a long period of time, go see a practitioner that is knowledgeable about that.
Yeah.
If they're trying to do like a short-term detox, I don't think there'd be any issues with being on different supplements to help support say a quarterly detox or, something like that.
So say somebody wanted to do that. They said that, they're like, okay, I feel fine, but I just want to do a quarterly detox. What would you recommend?
I think that there's different ways to do that. I mean, I think there's ways to do that with and without supplements. So let's talk about the without supplement first. So without supplements, you would definitely focus on, I would actually focus on, this sounds, I wasn't going to even talk about it on this podcast, but it's really doing a body, but also mind and spirit detox. It's a combination, because if we're running around, Ravi, like with chickens with their head cut off, how are we expected to do a detox? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we're taking all these supplements, but maybe we don't have a head because, like, like we're all over the place, right? So there's actually no mouth to actually, eat the supplements. So I think the first thing is just making sure that when someone's doing say a quarterly detox, that they're in a headspace, they have enough, room on their plate. Maybe they're not working as hard during that time, or they have a little bit of space in their schedule to focus on their own health. They're getting enough sleep. The stress management is good. Maybe they do some mind-body practice like yoga or meditation, something that can kind of put everything into context. That's part of detox too. Having a little bit of a digital detox, maybe once a week, putting away the cell phone or not looking at it as much, or, looking at screen time and tracking that. So all that's really important. The other thing, before I get into like the non-supplement nutritional part of the detox, is that, EMFs are a toxin, too. So electromagnetic frequency. So one of the things is, putting away the cell phone, and reducing screen time and all that's going to be really helpful. But I think just being in that mindset is really important. And then nutritionally, I would say that also, one more thing, actually, I was going to say sleep. So the detox system, this is actually one of the most important parts of this talk today, is that the detox system is most active at night, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And I think we covered this a little bit on the sleep podcast, but just because there's some overlap here, I think this is a really important point. If that person's not getting enough sleep, they're not going to be detoxing that well. The liver, literally, when they do ultrasound studies of the liver, they're seeing that the liver actually functionally enlarges at night. Like, it's just more active, right? Just like the best time to exercise the muscles, those big, muscles, is in the late afternoon, often for like peak, circadian rhythm, peak health and wellness, You riff off your podcast title. The best time to sleep from a perspective of detoxification and effective liver detoxification is between those 4 golden hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So like, if someone's like, I'm having trouble sleeping, or, when should I sleep? If they're trying to detox, at least get those 4, and then ideally, of course, 7 or 8 hours, because you're trying to, detox everything.
Right.
But back to nutrition, I think it's a plant, it's definitely a plant forward, or, as the buzzword now, plant-centered diet. You're going to be a lot of leafy greens, preferably organic, cruciferous vegetables. Fermented foods are good to help the microbiome, foods with a lot of fiber in it. Certain fruits, I tend to like things like blueberries or raspberries, some of the berries, I think. We also know that apples are really good for the red-skinned apples, are good for the quercetin in the skin. So then quercetin is also an antioxidant. And then protein is really, really important. Right. Protein meaning, animal protein, plant protein. Protein is going to be needed for the amino acids, especially for phase 2 liver detox. And then fats is kind of an overlooked one, because, we always talk about the food, but we don't really talk about the oils as much. Now, this is kind of depressing to me, Ravi, because as you may know, I like to eat out, sometimes, or I like good fine dining. But the issue is that most restaurants nowadays do not use healthy oils.
Right.
I've even called around, like a crazy person, like, hey, what kind of oil do you use? I'm not even like making an order for them. I'm just like talking to the manager, hey, or do you use olive oil? Like, what kind of oil? And they're usually like, no, we use vegetable oil. Vegetable oil sounds healthy.
Yeah.
But it's actually one of the most toxic kind of oils. It's, I guess it's like fractionated or it's heated up in a high way. So it's a very inflammatory oil and it damages the cell membranes. And you need your cell membranes, Ravi, to detoxify the body. The health of your body will be determined by the health of your cell membranes. So if you have good oils, those oils get incorporated into cell membranes like omega-3s, phospholipids like phosphatidylcholine, which you would find in egg yolks, liver, things like that, and supplements too. And then, also, I think cholesterol is actually part of a healthy cell membrane. So we do need some cholesterol. But the biggest thing is really avoiding those inflammatory oils. Inflammatory oils would mean things like corn oil and sunflower oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil.
Seed oils, yeah.
Seed oils, trans fats, trans fats would be in margarine and stuff like that. And then, so anytime someone says vegetable oil or soybean oil, that's unfortunately not that good for you.
Yeah. It sounds like you're making the healthier choice, but you're really not. So, think about avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil. Those are some of the healthier ones.
Ravi, I'm starting to believe even that, besides eating organic, the most important thing we can do nutritional wise is to eat healthy oils. That's like the backbone of the cell membrane is the fats. And so, think about, like I said, the brain is 60% fat.
Yeah.
All the cells run with the membrane. Yeah. So the fats are really important. And that's not something you're gonna really think about often in sort of these nutritional plans. It's kind of like, we'll eat the salad, we'll eat the healthy proteins and whatever it is, healthy protein, healthy carb. But if they're stir frying it in a bad oil, that's making everything toxic.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. So, okay. So we got the healthy food, we got sleep, we got exercise, sweating. We're doing the 3-month detox. What supplements would you recommend and at what doses?
I would say for most people, they would benefit from a multivitamin because it has some of the key B vitamins in there, like B2, B3, which are riboflavin, niacin. It has folic acid, B12, which is cobalamin, pyridoxine. These are all B vitamins that are important in a process called methylation, which is one of the key detox pathways in phase 2. So B vitamins are important, zinc and copper are important, selenium is important. So when you add all these things up, vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin E, which are antioxidants, when you add all these things up, it's like you might as well take a multivitamin because it has mostly these things in there. If you want to be more precise, I would say from a kind of a key, detoxification antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin E, and glutathione are very important because they are active in different parts of the cell or bloodstream. So it's kind of like you want to have detox capacity in all areas. You want to have capacity in the bloodstream, you want to have capacity in the cell membrane, and you have capacity inside the cell. And so by optimizing the CE and glutathione, that's happening in a synergistic way. Besides that, I think you can...
So glutathione isn't part of a multivitamin regimen, and typically people would take N-acetylcysteine as a supplement. So a multivitamin, N-acetylcysteine.
I think those are key ones. And then depending on what's going on with the patient, if they're having liver test abnormalities or fatty liver, then I think adding milk thistle is a good idea.
Okay.
Also silymarin, that's a good one. And then another big thing is, some people do need a little bit of extra protein. So either like a protein powder, maybe some extra branched chain amino acids, which help to build muscle, especially leucine. So some of these things are a bit additional, but depending on the protein needs of the patient and things like that of the person, I think sometimes some supplemental protein is helpful.
So anything else in this? Now some of this stuff, like a good multivitamin, I'd want to take every day. Magnesium, I don't want to take every day. Curcumin, I as a supplement that has so many benefits, I would take that every day. But other things that you would only take for that 1 quarter, like you mentioned, N-acetylcysteine. I don't know if you need to take that on a daily basis.
I don't think you need to take that every day. Although there have been studies, Ravi, for any of your listeners who are over the age of 85, that once you get to 85, that's my plan. Live long enough to, see the point where I need to definitely take some glutathione. At age 85, everyone's glutathione drops.
Okay.
And because NAC, like you said, is the building block of glutathione, I would take either NAC or glutathione at that age. Okay.
Okay. And then anything else? Protein supplements, anything else?
Yeah. If they're having gut issues, like leaky gut issues, then you might add some glutamine, for instance.
Okay.
If they're having cardiac issues, you might add some taurine. These are types of types of amino acids. You could, I like curcumin. I think that's a great idea. Magnesium is a great idea. Also, CoQ10 is another antioxidant that could be really helpful for detoxification. And then I think on the herbal side, there's different things, but depending on if you're actually trying to actively bind out some toxins, which, that would be another kind of discussion, but there's certain things like burdock root or dandelion, milk thistle we mentioned, dim, which is another supplement. So there's a bunch of things that could help with either binding or excreting toxins. Ox bile we talked about, which helps digest fats and kind of helps with that gallbladder function there. So I think there's some other things that can be added depending on the health of the person and their goals and stuff.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's super helpful. And I know we're running a little over time, but I do want to answer the question that we brought up in the beginning. Juice cleanses, celery, juice cleanses. We discussed all the things needed for detoxification and avoiding toxins. If somebody wants to detoxify, are these worth doing or not?
Yeah, I think that they can be worth doing as a springboard to a more consistent pattern of healthy lifestyle, and some people need that structure in place, because let's face it, there's Dr. Google, now there's AI happening, right? There's all these things happening with healthcare. And I wonder about kind of system overload. Like we're all kind of overloaded with what should I do? What cleanse should I go on? Or, what should I eat? And so these cleanses, I think the real benefit to me is that it helps reset your body a bit. It doesn't replace your own body's detoxification. It just kind of augments it. And it kind of creates a nice structure for people to, follow and kind of get back on the wagon, so to speak. So that's how I would view these detoxes. But, if you do a detox 4 times a year, all the other weeks of the year, you're still wanting to detox effectively. So I don't think you need to be on a quote unquote detox program, 365 weeks a year, but it can be helpful for people. Is it necessary for everyone? No, I don't think that everyone needs a detox program, right? But there are certain people that would benefit. Like I think if they're trying to jumpstart a healthy metabolism, they're trying to lose visceral fat, try to lose some visceral fat in terms of being overweight. If they're trying to, jumpstart energy-wise, there might be something where there's a certain cocktail of vitamins and nutrients that are going to jumpstart the mitochondria to produce more ATP, and they're going to need more upfront, nutrients to help restart that process. People potentially with, immune or autoimmune conditions where there's a lot of inflammation going on. So a lot of that could be, helped with a detoxification process. And we didn't get into fasting, but I should say that sometimes people can actually do well by doing nothing more than fasting. Fasting itself is also a detox program too.
Yeah, that's a great point. So basically, the answer is, you can do these detoxes. It's not like you can eat pizza, beer, ice cream, do a detox for 3 days, go back to pizza, beer, ice cream.
Yeah, that will not get you the results that you want. Right. That's correct.
It's not like the way to cleanse your body. It's a springing board. It's, a way to kind of get you on the right track. The real way to detoxify is, as we mentioned earlier, really focus on your mind, your spirit, your sleep, exercise, eating a proper diet, really focusing vegetable focused and eating the right amount of protein, eating the right fats, and, all the other things that we've talked about, like sweating and things of that sort. Like these are all beneficial things that help you detoxify. These cleanses, they're not bad, but they're not like the only way to do this. And some of them, as we know, they're just marketing ploys and trying to sell product. Again, not going to really hurt you, but not going to help you as much as they say they are.
I should mention one more thing, Ravi, which is that we live in the DC area, which literally is a swamp, right?
Yeah.
This is not a political statement. This is just like DC is a swamp. So it is often under sea level, or it's at a level where there's at least 60% humidity. And when it's 60% humidity, there is something called mold that will grow.
Yes.
And mold is a toxin, or we should say mold excretes different things called mycotoxins or mold toxins because they're trying to compete with other molds to survive, essentially. So that's why they secrete these toxins. But this is also something that the liver has to, detoxify, something the body has to deal with. And this can be very damaging to the cells and to the immune system. And this is something that if you're listening out there and you're wondering why you feel worse in your home or work environment, and then when you go on vacation or something, you feel much better, or if you get outside fresh air, you feel better, that could be an indoor environmental, mycotoxin issue. And having someone come out to your house, a certified building biologist or someone that's involved with, diagnosis or, basically identification of mycotoxins could be really transformative for your health if that's an issue.
That's an excellent point. Super important point. And Andy, if you have like maybe a few more minutes, I know we're past our time, but just want to know, high level overview. If somebody came to you and said, "Hey, look, I feel just toxic. There's something going on. I don't know what it is." What kind of tests would you run? What are some things you'd look for?
In terms of tests, I think you definitely want to look at some basic tests first, like their liver tests, their kidney tests, how are they excreting, their urinalysis, things like that. You can actually tell a lot from their pH often about their acid and alkaline balance. Someone with a pH of like a 5.0, maybe they're not eating enough vegetables, and that could be really helpful. Magnesium level, I think, would be helpful. I would do an omega check, which is omega-3 fatty acid level. You could look at their gut microbiome, too. You could definitely look at that. That would be helpful. And then depending on kind of where they wanted to go, you go with these higher level tests, like look at mycotoxin testing, look at environmental toxin testing, heavy metal testing. We do in our clinic actually a lot of screening for heavy metals. We check lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic through the blood, and sometimes urine, arsenic as well. But I think this is helpful to get, some baseline. Also, we didn't mention, but thyroid function is really important for detoxification. Thyroid's really important for metabolism. And then we actually have a test, which I'm sure you know well, Ravi, is called the body impedance analysis. That's an M-body test. And that looks at basically visceral fat, muscle mass, hydration status, resting metabolic rate. So this is going to tell you a lot, because if there's fat, especially excess fat, there are toxins.
Yeah.
Because toxins get stored in the fat. I want to mention this for all the men, but especially women out there too, that are listening to this, is that because fat is stored in the toxins, one of the root causes of breast cancer is toxic overload in the breast. So that's really, really important to understand that detoxification has the potential to basically modify and improve your immune system. And we can't say it necessarily prevents cancer, but of course, toxins cause cancer. So if you reduce the toxins, then in theory, the cancer risk will be lower. So I think that's really, really important to talk about the fact that, we want to get the toxins ideally out of the areas where where there's too much toxins in the fatty tissue, because that's going to lead to cellular damage down the line.
Absolutely. What about organic acid testing?
Yeah, we definitely do some organic acid testing. There's some doctors in the clinic and practitioners in the clinic that are a bit more expert in that than I am, so I would defer to them often on that. But that can really be beneficial in really pinpointing in a personalized way what some of the roadblocks are, the metabolic roadblocks, in terms of what is kind of making the energy cycle go and what might be blocking that energy cycle. And based on that, you can deduce from that test what micronutrients or amino acids or different things might be needed to keep that cycle running more smoothly, because you need that cycle running smoothly to detoxify well.
And what about VOC testing and pesticide testing? Do you recommend that? Do you do that?
Or are you talking about urine or blood or?
Yeah, blood tests for VOCs.
I've done some of those. I find a lot of plastics and a lot of different compounds, especially in war veterans, actually. They're exposed to a lot of like burn pits and just who knows what else, Agent Orange, and stuff. And we found a lot of toxins like that. I don't do too many toxin blood tests, although I think that's a good idea. I feel like everyone is toxic to some degree. But if someone's coming in and they're not getting results from the first test, that's certainly something to consider for sure.
And I heard glyphosate testing, everybody's exposed. It's so ubiquitous. It may not be helpful. What do you do that at all?
I mean, it is part of some of the functional tests that we do. Is just part of the package, is that is tested as one of the environmental chemicals. The best way to get rid of glyphosate, besides the supplement of humic acid, fulvic acid, is to just drink a lot of water and just pee it out, because the half-life, you can actually just pee out a lot of glyphosate and to eat organic. I think those are ways to, help reduce the glyphosate.
Okay. Andy, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much. We always learn so much from speaking with you. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, or maybe even be seen in your clinic, how would they do so?
Thank you, Ravi, for having me on today. And thank you so much again. This is such an important topic. I'm glad we got to talk about detox today. The clinic, so we have a clinic in Bethesda, Maryland. We actually have another location now in Potomac, Maryland, both in Montgomery County, just across the river from where you are, Ravi. Yeah. In Northern Virginia. So we are in Capital Integrative Health, which is cihealth.org, O-R-G. And you can find us on our website there, and you can request an appointment, I think, by just calling us or emailing us, and we can be happy to see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you did, please make sure to hit the subscribe and the like button and leave a comment about what you'd like to see on our future episodes. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not substitute for professional care, nor does it constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you're looking for medical care, please seek a qualified doctor or medical professional. For more information, or if you'd like to check out our programs, please visit our website, peakwellnesshealth.com. That's peakwellnesshealth.com.